So next, I want to talk about why I like investing in landlord-friendly states. As I mentioned before, I live in California. It's more tenant-friendly in California, so it makes it very difficult to evict somebody. There's a lot of rent control in California. So because of that, I prefer markets where the laws are more in favor of the landlord to make sure that the investment is doing well. So in this lecture, I want to talk about what makes a state landlord friendly, the difference between good and bad eviction laws, and how do you figure out what the evictions law is for your specific state or market. So what makes a state landlord friendly? Well, it's easy, fast and simple eviction laws. As I mentioned before, in tenant-friendly states like California, New York, it can take 6 to 12 months to evict a non-paying tenant. I hear some investors in California, tenants have not been paying for over 12 months and they still do not have a court eviction date yet. And it can always be delayed due to COVID. So a lot is out of your control, especially in states like California. And as you know, if there's no rents, this will decrease your net operating income. It will decrease the value of your apartment complex. And we're investing in apartments to get more cash flow, to decrease our NOI, which will increase the value of the apartment. But if the landlord real estate laws are not in your favor as a landlord, then a lot's out of your control. And another factor I look at is what's a lower property tax. So obviously, if you have higher property tax, that increases your expense. Example of a high property tax state may be Texas. That will decrease your net operating income. And that decreases the value of your apartment complex. So for me, I really look at what states have low property tax rates, and you can figure that out pretty easily just by going on Google and showing a picture of a map. It's pretty simple. And next, it's lack of rent control. So rent control is when a local government places a restriction on when and how often rental rates can be increased. So, for example, in San Francisco, where I own some single-family homes, you're only allowed to raise the rents by at most 3% every 12 months. So, if someone is paying, $1,500 a month in rent, but maybe the apartment next door is renting for $4,500 a month, most you can raise the rent by 3%, and the tenants know this, so they'll never leave because they'll never get any rent as cheap as that. And if you're unable to increase the rents, you can't increase your NOI, and the value of the property goes up slower. So, these are the three things I look at when assessing which market I want to invest in. I want simple eviction laws that favor the landlord, lower property taxes, and lack of rent control. So that's just kind of a quick overview, and hopefully you kind of take these nuggets when selecting your market. So let's go over some examples of good versus bad eviction laws. So for good eviction laws, just for simplicity, I'm using Oklahoma. The landlord can evict the tenant for a lease violation. So in Oklahoma, it's a 15-10 rule. So the landlord can give a written notice called a 15-day notice, which gives the tenant 10 days to fix the issue. If the tenant cannot fix the issue in 10 days, then they have 5 days to vacate the property. It's very simple. I had to evict one tenant, for example. He was a hoarder and was letting homeless people into his unit to shower, to sleep, and it created a bed bug infestation in the apartment complex. So once we found that out, and actually another tenant tattled on him, we issued a 15-day notice, which basically said, hey, you have 10 days to clean up your unit and to stop allowing homeless people to come in. So, he didn't comply, and we went to court, and, we won the eviction, and we're awarded his keys. It's very simple. 15 days is all it took. If the same situation happened in California, I'd still be waiting. It'd take over 12 months. So, you want good eviction laws, and you can find that out by going on Google. So it's not too difficult. And for bad eviction laws, let me just use California as an example. Easy one to bash on here. But the landlord begins with a 60 or 120-day notice to fix the issue. Then the eviction takes another 4 to 6 weeks. So right out the gate, Oklahoma is 15 days, you're done. It's fast and easy, right? But in California, 120 days. That's almost 10 times as much. And the tenant has a good case, or the tenant aggressively defends your eviction, then this process is delayed. So, in California, people know that it's hard for the landlord to evict you. So they will do their best to drag it on as long as possible. And that's why it lasts over 12 months. And, a lot of things are out of your control. So it's kind of one of the downsides. So that's why you should definitely consider, what the eviction laws in your state. You could talk to your property manager, and they can tell you. I mean, they typically will know if they're managing, over 400 units. So that's kind of a good starting place to start when picking your market. So next, I want to show you how do I figure out the eviction laws for my market. And if you notice a trend already, just Google it. You can literally Google the city eviction laws. And as I mentioned, are you noticing a trend of Google here? It's very powerful. It can answer a lot of your questions. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, I Googled Oklahoma City eviction laws. And right here it says, in Oklahoma, first thing, the landlord can evict the tenant for a lease violation. The landlord must provide a written notice, called a 15-day notice to comply, which gives the tenant 10 days to fix the issue. So if they don't fix the issue in 10 days, they have 5 days to leave. And if they don't leave in 5 days, we go to eviction court. And usually, I've evicted 4 tenants already in Oklahoma, and I've won all 4. And it was a very painless process. So that's one way to figure out the eviction laws. And then the other way is to ask your property manager. When I interview my property managers, it's one of the first questions I ask. Number one, it tests their local knowledge of the area. And then number two, it's just for me to know if it's going to be challenging or not. And I like to ask too, well, how much does it cost to evict the tenant? So you can kind of get a gauge of how much that is. Oklahoma, it's around 400 to 500. And the property manager actually shows up to court on your behalf, which is definitely nice. So, it's not that difficult to figure out what the eviction laws is for any market that you want to invest in. So I just wanted to show some sample states with very easy eviction laws, just so that you know. Indiana, Georgia, Kentucky, Oklahoma, where I invest in, Texas, which is right next to Oklahoma. Texas, I will note that it does have higher property taxes. Arizona, which is bordering California, pretty popular and hot. Florida and Alabama. So, for me personally, I like investing in these states. I currently invest in Alabama, Oklahoma, but I really like Georgia as a market. And, down the road, when I start to scale, I do want to invest in Arizona. I know it's a very hot market over there, literally and figuratively, but it's still cheaper than California, and you still have, simple eviction laws. So, if you want to find out what states have simple eviction laws, like, once again, just Google it. I literally just Googled, which states have simple eviction laws, and, this list populated up. So, this isn't a fully comprehensive list, but just want to give you an idea as to some possible markets that you may be already investing in or you haven't considered before.